Everybody. Bonjour, bonjour. All right. Derek couldn't make it today, so I'll be doing the education jurisdiction update. For those who are new, I'll introduce myself. Bonjour, Brian, Achni Panaskum, Indigenous Kaz, Martin Falls First Nation, and Junji. I am from the Moose clan, and yeah, I grew up in Martin Falls First Nation. Uji Cree was my first language. Uh, I spoke it until I began grade one, in which I moved to a immersion school in Geraldton, Ontario. So I slowly lost my language after moving there, and it's been one of my passions to continue to learn. So I'm working with my family to continue teaching myself the language and continue to carry on the tradition of language revitalization. Because I am a single parent, I raised my niece, and I have a son who is 3, and my niece is currently 14 years old. Oh my goodness. I've had her since she was 5, and I can't believe it's been 9 years. I remember the day she first came to move with me, she was so tiny. And this is actually her jean jacket I'm wearing today. She she changes her styles more times than there are seasons in a year. So one of her styles was jean jackets and like skateboarder wear. And that's kind of what I inherited was all of her skateboarding clothes. So sometimes you'll see me wearing like cargo pants or a jean jacket, but it's I just don't want it to go to waste. But yeah, it makes me look cool. I look hip. I know the kids don't say hip. So yeah, I'm Brian Achipanesca. Um, I'll tell you a couple factoids about myself. Um, my team were laughing at me on our last trip to Toronto. I got fired as the directions and map guide because I'm very blind and it's even worse at nighttime. So Malcolm fired me. So if you guys ever see me screeching or hear me screeching, I'm trying echolocation. Another factoid about me is um, yeah, I'm really blind and also I'm very forgetful. I always lose my glasses and my phone, even if they're right in front of me. But if it's a $20 bill, I'll see it a mile away. But yeah, those are a few facts about me. We'll get started with the overview of the education jurisdiction presentation. I know some of you have seen this before. It's going to be familiar to some of you. There are a few updates in there. We're going to be covering a high-level overview that talks about sorry, I'm just trying to figure out this remote. Okay, so it's a high-level overview that talks about the progress of education jurisdiction and details some of the work ahead for interested First Nations to move on from the Indian Act to exercise jurisdiction in a First Nation controlled education system. In this presentation, we'll cover 4 sections: education jurisdiction, next steps for First Nations, the territory-wide education body, as well as what our actions are as Anishinaabe Nation. Okay, so we got the history, the 3-tier framework, as well as benefits. Before we move on from that, I just wanted to give you guys a little information. There are a few new members to my team. So we have Malcolm Sagich. He's sitting, him and Raina are at the booth today. So don't be shy, go say hi. They're really great additions to the team, and I know some of you have probably seen their emails spamming you guys. So Yeah, so make them feel welcome. They come at a really important time because now is a really important time for us to move forward with the work for jurisdiction. And it's a really important time because with the NAN elections this year, the next year we have the elections for Canada. So time is time is like of the essence, and we really need to begin moving this work forward and begin community engagement and consultation. So I'll talk about the history here. As you guys know, this work, for those of you who have seen this presentation before, this work started in 1999. But I'll say this work started before that because there were other things that took place leading up to the signing of the framework agreement that just kind of set things in motion for the work we're doing today. So at the present day, in 2024, we are still in the negotiation process and community readiness. So the next step for our work ahead is to prepare communities for ratification and to prepare communities for implementation. So right now, our team is reaching out to communities to begin building that awareness, to begin planning community visits and coordinating with you guys to get to your communities, inform the members on what the work looks like ahead for us. So in the three-tiered system, the first level is the community. First Nations will continue to deliver education programs and services for elementary and secondary education, the same services they deliver today. And First Nations will manage their schools' education programs as set out in their local education code. First Nations will also be able to develop culturally appropriate curriculum, such as First Nations language instruction, as well as land-based learning. So under the new system, it'll there will be things that set in motion, and it'll be like a really important time for us to make the investments and to prioritize what's important to us for education and educating our children. I know for myself, as a parent, I I have a really importance on language and education, and I always press that on on my kids that the best investment you can make in your life, in yourself, and I always try to work with them every day when I get home to do homework, to prepare for the next day, for the next week, if they have any activities going on in their school to participate. As presence in time, that is some of the best things that kids will always remember is you showing up, being there for them. So that's one of the important things of the new education system is being able to make those investments in our education. Right, I need a third arm. Good. All right. So in the next section here, we got second level services. In the provincial system, second level services are typically provided by school boards. These second level services can assist with classroom instruction, provide student support, teacher development. Also, a First Nation. Sorry, my screen dead. Okay. Also, a First Nation. A First Nation school in need of a speech therapist may have this service delivered through its tribal council, or they may coordinate with other First Nations to purchase. Second level services can also be provided by the territory-wide education body. Third level. All right. The third level is a territory-wide education body. So this body will set standards for participating First Nations, and they will also distribute education funding. It'll also be able to provide second level services to First Nation schools, and First Nations will um, select the board for the territory-wide education body. So each First Nation will be responsible for um, nominating somebody, a representative on the board for the territory-wide education body. And participating First Nations will also participate in through annual special meetings, annual assemblies for just to make sure there's accountability. So these three tiers will work together to create a new First Nation controlled education system. And First Nations and the territory-wide education body will enact education laws that govern our First Nation controlled education system, create education program services. The First Nation controlled education system will promote language and culture, implement programs and services, and improve student retention rates, achievement, and well-being. Establish and maintain system-wide education standards that support the transfer of students between non-regular schools and the provincial schools, as well as establish a system of accountability for First Nation members. The new system will have secure and predictable funding under the fiscal agreement, and participating First Nations will have funding to continue to operate schools on reserve, continue the tuition agreement with local school boards, support student-focused education programs and services that incorporate culture, language, history, knowledge, and values, address special education needs, as well as develop curriculum and educational resources. Participating First Nations will continue to be eligible for future federal investments in First Nation education. So the current stage we are at right now, we are currently negotiating the fiscal agreement. And during this phase, it's really important that we have community participation and consultation moving forward, because it's really hard to negotiate something if you don't have information or data about those communities. So when we're negotiating, we need to have data sharing agreements in place for the First Nation and the NAN negotiation. Otherwise, we'll be just negotiating on invisible numbers, theoretical numbers, you know? And it's always better to have actual numbers in place so we can negotiate a better funding package to improve the funding situation in your community, to have stable and secure funding that provide adequate services to your communities. Because the proposal-based funding right now is not meeting our needs. Like when you attend school, like I went to school in a First Nation community as well as a provincial school. And you can see the differences. You can see the glaring difference. One of the first things I saw was the fact that our heat and our electricity always went up. Just because it's a diesel powered device. Our electricity is powered by diesel. And especially during cold weather, like there would be our school is shut down for sometimes a week. And that's a week of kids losing their education, falling behind, you know? So there are a lot of important needs that need to be addressed, and with secure and stable funding, we can make those investments in education. We can identify what is our priorities, and we can set like a standard direction, a vision for our people in our communities. Because it's really important. One of the things that I made it a mission for myself, my family, is to break that cycle of dependence to break the cycle of that trauma that we experienced transitioning from going to school on grade zero to going to school in an urban setting. So my niece and my son will never have to live that trauma of being in a home that's full of strangers, of being dropped off at the wrong place. That just happened. Because I got dropped off at a stranger's house and there was no, they didn't even expect me. And it was even the wrong house. So I stayed there overnight. And there's stories like that all across Canada. So there are these glaring challenges and barriers to our students succeeding in high school. So I think when we do have more control and authority over our education, our future, and our funding, we'll be able to make more investment, ensuring that our students are safe, secure, have quality education. So the next steps for interested First Nations. So one of the next steps for First Nation education directors is to reach out to our NAN Education Jurisdiction team. So the point of contact for my team would be Reina Marino and Malcolm Sagage. So some of you guys may recognize their names or their email, M. Sagage and R. Marino. I don't know if they've made it to your junk box yet. But yeah, so contact our team. We're willing to come to your community. We're happy to come. We're ready and available, and we'll make it happen, you know? So let us know when and where, and we'll be there. Because there are 6 of us on the team, and we're able to try to do our best to support and accommodate the community needs. Another step for First Nations is to um, have a data sharing agreement. Right, I didn't know I was pressing the button. I had idle hands. Like I said, I'm bad at directions and I'm blind as a bat. So this is risky business having me up here. Okay, be patient with me, please. Okay, all right. I think we're back in business. Okay, all right. Like I said, one of the next steps is to have a data sharing agreement. Our team will be sending out a information sharing package. Something wrong. Okay, all right. We're back in business. So, you're gonna be seeing emails coming from Malcolm and Reina. In those emails, they'll be sharing a community engagement package, and in that package will be a flow-through agreement funding for the community-based coordinator position, as well as a job description, job poster, as well as a workshop template, a work plan template. So there is going to be a work plan template in these community engagement packages, and it's supposed to act as a guide to have community and community-based coordinators know what the first 10 steps they're going to need to do to begin community engagement. And a part of these steps is to plan a community visit, to um, plan a meeting with leadership, work with education authority, submit the data sharing agreement, as well as complete the work plan template, because it's just a template, it's just supposed to be a starting point to give people an idea of the first few steps that each community needs to do. And our team is here to support. We're here to help and guide in any way we can. Another step is to develop their local education code for their community. Now, for this step, we have toolkit that's near completion. We'll be having it done by next month. Claudia and Serenity are working their fingers to the bone, typing and editing and spamming my inbox. But yeah, they're doing a great job um, preparing to finalize the toolkit so we can begin sharing it with the community and begin building awareness and understanding on what our rules are in this process. So the local education toolkit includes a local education code template as well as examples, as well as kind of like a what is it called? It shows examples from other local education codes in other First Nation jurisdictions, such as the Mi'kmaq, the Nez. Like they have developed these. There are already communities that are doing this work, and I had the pleasure to hear presentations from them this spring. So I was able to hear some presentations from the Mi'kmaq, the Musqueam in Alberta, as well as the First Nations Education Commission. I think that's in BC, as well as the Chiefs of Manitoba. So each of these communities have had a different approach to jurisdiction and how they move forward with starting that jurisdiction. So developing this local education code is one important step in moving and preparing for ratification and implementation of the education agreement. Another step is the community-based coordinators. Currently, funding is available through NAN for First Nations that are interested in moving forward with community engagement and hiring a community-based coordinator. Right now, we have funding available for 74,800 for a part-time position or a full-time position. It's up to the community. We have job descriptions and templates for both positions. So just reach out to Malcolm and he can work with you to accommodate what your community needs and to try to support in any way we can to get them their office supplies, to get them any other support they need to be adequately ready to do their work. The community-based coordinator's role is to engage with community members, build an understanding around education jurisdiction, the fiscal agreement, and the implementation plan. To work with communities to develop the local education code and to prepare communities for ratification of the education jurisdiction agreement. Sorry guys, I had surgery last week on my mouth, and that's why I sound like I have a list. I'm not trying to sound British, I swear. I gotta stop watching Downton Abbey. Okay. Community-based coordinators have toolkits that are designed to help communities understand the education agreement and to facilitate the development. The territory-wide education body, governance and funding, and jurisdiction. So the territory-wide education body, this will be a new system that'll be overseen by participating First Nations. So it'll be controlled by First Nations who will nominate someone to sit on the board of the territory-wide education body. Participating First Nations will choose a representative. And the method, the way this will happen, it has not been set in stone yet, as there still needs to be community engagement that needs to happen. We need to know, we need to hear direction on how First Nations want to move forward with this. So this is one of the areas where we do need that consultation, where we do need that engagement. So we can begin having these foundational blocks in place to build this territory-wide education system up from. Now, the territory-wide education body, it will have funding that will be separate from the funding First Nations receive for education, for their schools, and for education services. The staff and roles of the territory-wide education body will be finalized during the implementation phase to ensure that it is operational upon implementation date. So there are a few things that need to happen. Like I said, there needs to be a community-based coordinator in each community to begin building that understanding and working with leadership and community members to develop their local education codes or education laws and to prepare communities for the ratification vote. Because this education agreement will come to a vote in the communities in the near future. And one of the things we want to make sure is that First Nation members, like community members, that when we come there to plan and to what do you call it? It's almost like having an election or a nomination where we're going to be going community to community to do a ratification vote. And if community members are not aware and if they're not informed about the education territory-wide education body, the education agreement, like I don't know what. So this work is really important that we begin doing this as soon as possible. The territory-wide education body will set standards and distribute funding to participating First Nation schools and may also provide second-level services to support students, teachers, and schools. Now, the jurisdiction. Now, First Nations will delegate jurisdiction to the territory-wide education body through the education agreement. Some of the sections include establishing policies, procedures, and guidelines relating to the management and operation of the territory-wide education system. I'm sorry, these texts are so tiny. Right? Developing curriculum guidelines for First Nation schools, developing school, teacher, and student assessment tools, establishing standards for reviews of classroom practices and educational programs at schools, developing, monitoring, and enforcing education standards, managing of education capital, including construction, maintenance, and repair, as well as demolition of schools and other education-related assets. Receiving, administrating, and distributing funding through the fiscal transfer agreement to participating First Nations. Developing requirements for granting diplomas by participating First Nations, establishing qualifications, experience requirements for teachers and other education officials. The territory-wide education body policies, guidelines, tools, and standards will be developed during the implementation phase based on feedback from community consultations. So you see, a lot of this work needs to happen, and we do need to hear from community members. We do need to hear from educators and leadership. We do need to know what the community's vision is for education and how they want to, like, how they want to be represented in the territory-wide education body, if they are to be a part of it. So I'll give you another example. The First Nations Education Steering Committee in BC, they made it a priority to meet a need in their community to begin building their own capacity, building their own teachers. So that was an investment they made into their schools, to their people, to begin educating and what do you call it? Certifying their own teachers. So that was an investment that they identified as a need, so they were able to do that. And I think they've been doing it for about 4 years now, and it's really helped the community's teacher issue. And I know this is an issue in a lot of communities. So this is just an example on something we can make a priority. We could make it a mission for us to meet the need in our schools. So next steps, NAN next steps, continue negotiations as well as community engagement and consultation. NAN action, So NAN and Canada have negotiated an education agreement, and it's now substantially complete. So we have a first draft with that. What that means, we have a first draft of the education agreement. It will be, we will be sharing this education agreement in our community visit. So when we come to your communities, we'll be bringing that draft of the agreement to hear feedback from leadership, from educators, community groups. So NAN and Canada will continue negotiations on the fiscal and implementation plan in the fiscal agreement. So these negotiations are taking place right now. And for the fiscal agreement negotiations, we've had 6 meetings to date. And for implementation plan, we've had 8 meetings to date. And from those meetings, I would say a lot of community engagement and consultation needs to happen before we could even finish those negotiations. So we need to hear from communities, need information from community, so we can move this work forward and begin that process of preparing our communities for ratification and implementation of the education agreement. So NAN will continue engaging with the Chiefs Committee on Education, the Education Committee, and NAN advisory groups to seek feedback on agreements, engagement materials, and the implementation plan. Does anyone have any questions on the actions, the NAN actions for the okay. Does anyone have any questions to NAN actions regarding the fiscal negotiation, community engagement, local education code, ratification? Any questions? Yep. Of course I knew he was gonna be asking a question. He's just bugging me. Yep. Oh, like the body or the system? Yeah, we have examples and models right now.
Yeah.
And we'll that's what the
Do you have it here?
I don't have it here, but we are gonna
And
share it
why not?
because we have to go through an internal review process
Okay,
before sharing information.
part of that review process involves your committee, right?
It involves the education committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just wondered because this process has been going on for years.
I know.
I mean, older than me.
Oh.
And I'm just wondering, how much of that community, process consultations happened before? Now it's becoming a full-blown entity or jurisdiction process. A lot of grassroots people don't even know what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and that's why we need to be in the
Well, that should have happened in the beginning of the process.
yeah, and
I'm
that's
just kind of worried about the lack of people joining
yeah,
because a lot of us are in process of doing the REA.
Yeah.
Because while we're waiting, do you know how much time you still have with the negotiations?
we are aiming to have this within a year and a half.
Okay. I'm just wondering because I have to work with the First Nations on the REA process and then once we get that done, it's a 5-year agreement. So,
Our team is ready. Like we're waiting and ready. We're waiting on the education directors. We're waiting on them. We've been waiting.
yeah, I'm just asking and I'm just wondering and talking for those people that want to stand up. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question because the REA process is very important. It does set a new ground level for funding. And that is something we're hoping to build on, to expand upon. So that's why this community engagement work needs to happen. And that's why I'm hoping we can work together to move this work forward. Our team is ready. We are waiting. we've sent many calls, many emails, and only a handful of people ever get back to us. So, like, we're doing our part. Yeah.
Yeah, question. We got a few of these glasses to read what it is. So, you're gonna have a data sharing agreement, with the First Nation, in relation to the funding they need to do this jurisdiction, right? And I thought it was, I'm looking at it and I was hoping that it would be, based on the need or requirement of the First Nation in order to deliver such a program. So why is it needed when requesting funding? This has an old system to extract data from First Nation for its own benefit. Is this data gonna get to ISC or is it just gonna be fine with NAN?
ISC already has the data. The data sharing agreement will be between the First Nation and NAN Education Jurisdiction team and the ISC
So,
share that data.
so data, ISC has the data and still underfund us. Makes me worry about it. So another thing was, what are you talking about grassroots and people knowing about the process? How come we don't have a handbook that we could use
We do.
to take a little training on? That we can give out to people?
Yeah,
Mm,
that's a
in our
good idea. We
communities.
should make a smaller one.
Yeah,
We do have a handbook.
because I know one thing is if you show me, you come with a binder, you're gonna throw it up onto the side and put it there on your desk. You never can tell anybody. So I want to figure out, NAN, education jurisdiction versus the REE. Will those two be able to run together, or you gotta choose one or the other?
No, you're able to do both. Because the REA process is intended to be a regional education agreement that builds a new level of funding, right? It meets the needs that communities have right now. So Derek has said in the past that he encourages people to continue their REA negotiations and to get that new funding and to at least be better off than you were before.
Hi, Brian. I think this is maybe a question for Sherry or somebody, but what I'm hearing is that NAN's ready to go, but the education directors aren't responding. So if you have a lack of engagement response from the education directors, what's the plan for that? And I'm not sure if I'm included in one of those people not responding. I checked my email. I don't have anything since January, so maybe I'm not part of that because NNEC is not party to the agreement, but I would like to know if we're hearing that it's the education directors that are delaying the process, what is the engagement plan with the education directors? So, because we're hearing from the communities, they want to move forward, and I don't
Yeah.
think any of us want to be in a position where we feel we're delaying the process, right? So I think,
agree.
I don't know if Sherry's here or somebody's here that can speak to that engagement plan, because obviously, none of us want to be at the end of the day saying, well, you guys have been holding this up, right? So I see Kathy getting up, so maybe, or are you just getting, go get Sherry? Okay. And I don't want to put that on you, Brian, because you're a staff member, so you're not the one that's engaging directly with, I'm not sure if it's the education committee you're speaking of, or the education directors of the member First Nations, or who is, responsible for that approval and feedback so that you can move forward. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, we do have a communication strategy, and in that strategy, that it outlines that the point of contact for the First Nation is the education director in each First Nation. And there are 39 First Nations that are party to the agreement in principle, so there are focus. Those 39 First Nations.
So is it the 39 First Nations you're saying that aren't responding for you to be able to move forward?
There are probably 10 that are like,
just so we have an understanding, because what we're hearing is we want to move forward, but then we're being told it's actually the education directors that are the reason why we're not moving forward. So that was my question. Which education directors are you talking about? Like the education committee, education directors, the community education directors, just so that those of us that are here and working with our partners can say, you know, like,
The
We
First
have-
Nation, in each First Nation, like, we're not getting response. Majority of them.
oh, okay.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
So when we're all, and there's a lot of, I, I invite you to be our table, to have cards. The contact information is on the brochures we're handing out, so please feel free. We are gonna make every effort to visit your communities, begin building that communication relationship. So some upcoming events we have, we're going to Martin Falls, Maryland, Nabinimik, Maxwell in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be heading to these 4 First Nations coming up. We just, and Nisinabe Cree is another one. So there's 5 communities we'll be going to in the next couple of weeks. And we are ready and willing to come to more communities, begin that dialogue, building that communication relationship, and that understanding and awareness of the education agreement, as well as how it differs from the because we do have communication very long time. So I think it would be good to give more insight and detail into how those engage with each other and what are the pros and cons. Because we do have a presentation that we want to share with that, but we do need to make the community share it. So yeah, so reach out to our team. We're here. We're ready to share. Thank you. So you can contact myself at b@chinipanetscom@nan.ca, or you can contact Malcolm Sagich. He's emailed a lot of the education directors in First Nation communities, as well as Reina Marino. So you can feel free to reach out to either of us. Alrighty. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right. Give it up for Brian Achipineskam, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for that.